On episode 263 of the Tennis Files podcast, I'll reveal the 6 lessons that I learned from Nick Kyrgios at the 2022 Citi Open. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Tennis Files podcast. Really pleased to have you listening to this one. And one of the most favorite parts of my year just finished up, and that is the week of the Citi Open. It just actually finished with Nick Kyrgios winning the singles and doubles championships, as well as Yoshihito Nishioka reaching the final against Nick in singles. And funny story, Yoshihito was the second ever interview at the Citi Open that I did on site, which was about 7 years ago. So it was pretty cool looking back at that. I don't think I even had a microphone back then. I just had the audio feed through the camera. But yeah, a really fun tournament. Kai Kanepi defeated Ludmila Samsonova in the women's final in 3 sets. I actually got to meet one of the members of her team, Dave Marshall, which was pretty cool. And I hope to get him on the podcast at some point. He also is on Benoit Paires' team, who, if you've been on my Instagram page, I have a nice photo of myself, my dad, and Benoit, as well as some other players from the Players' Party, which was that first Sunday, the second day of qualifying. And as I think I mentioned, Nick Kyrgios won the doubles as well with his friend Jack Sock. They defeated Austin Krajicek and Ivan Dodig in straight sets. And then in the women's dubs, Jessica Pegula and Aaron Rutliff defeated Anna Kalinskaya and Katie McNally. So yeah, it was so much fun. I went to the tournament every day except that first Sunday. And it just became a routine, after work, I would just go and watch tennis and try to learn as much as I could. And also just have a lot of fun seeing a lot of tennis friends there. So that's just living the life there. I felt very blessed. And I saw, I think, 5 Tennis Files podcast guests there who were playing, including Jamie Loeb, Sophie Chang, Noah Rubin, Tyson Kwiatkowski, and Dennis Kudla. So that was pretty cool. I think I mentioned on last week's episode that I went to the Players' Party, and that was really fun chatting with the players as well and meeting people there. And my good friend Will Hamilton from Fuzzy Yellow Balls, who I practice with regularly, he actually had a suite down there at the Citi Open. So it was really cool to hang out with him. And he invited a bunch of fantastic tennis instructors, including Scott and Nate from Player Court, Peter Freeman from Crunch Time Coaching, another great friend of mine. And we went out after, I think, Wednesday night tennis. It might have been Tuesday or Wednesday. I think Wednesday. And yeah, that was a long night, but it was really cool just connecting and talking about tennis and the industry and how to improve it and so forth. And I also met Andrew from Cult Tennis, which was really cool. And after the women's doubles finals, there was a little, I guess, Q&A session, very short one at the Citi Open tent, or the Citi tent, where I guess you needed a credit card from Citi to get in there. But I was able to raise my hand and ask one of 3 questions. Well, I guess 3 people got to ask questions, and I was one of them. And I asked Jessica, for us club level doubles players, when we are struggling in a match, what should we do? And her answer was basically to go back to basic patterns and try to focus on executing them, which was really great advice that, I think you all should think about and implement. So that's one pre-tip, I guess I could say. But this episode is about 6 lessons that I learned from Nick Kyrgios. And like I said, when I go to these tournaments, I not only try to enjoy myself, seeing friends and so forth and meeting people, but also learning from the best players in the world. So the first lesson that I learned from Nick is just analyzing his serve and the how much a lower ball toss can help your serve motion. To preface this, Nick Kyrgios, I believe, did not get broken the entire tournament. And when you have a lower ball toss, which I'm sure this, along with his physical attributes and athleticism, has contributed to this amazing serve. When you toss the ball lower, you definitely encourage two things. One is that you encourage a loose arm, the whip-like motion that you see with the hitting arm, and also you help prevent hitches on your serve. And I've seen this as well from some other instructors online, and it's just confirmed by Nick's motion, where if you toss the ball up pretty high and whatnot, then you have more time, and especially if you bring that hitting arm up at the same time as your tossing arm or even earlier, then there's just a lot more time for you to just play around, and like, I guess, drop the arm, the racket too early, or just like open up the racket face or whatever. But when you toss the ball up lower, that gives you less time, so you are going to have a smoother motion. And I actually implemented this the day after the final. I went on the tennis court and lowered my ball toss, and I also had my tossing arm go up earlier than my hitting arm, and coupling both those together actually enabled me to get more miles per hour on my serve, and it felt more whip-like, and it was definitely a great improvement. So that's the beauty of going to these tournaments. You can see what the pros are doing and implement it. So that's the first lesson that I found, was just the lower ball toss and the serve benefits that you get from that. The second lesson from Nick Kyrgios is the importance of a serious and focused mindset. As we all know, Nick can just go insane on the court, and this was the most focus that I've seen in a long time, and Nick also corroborated this. He mentioned in a post-match interview that he felt like his motivation is a lot higher than it used to be, and that he wanted to capitalize on what he felt was an advantage because he had just made the Wimbledon final, and he felt like his opponents definitely feared him on the court. And so Nick, while he did have some of his usual mutterings to his player box, he didn't have any sorts of prolonged outbursts. And I saw a ton of matches. I felt like I was watching Kyrgios like every other match almost, just because of, I think he played 9 matches, was it? 8 or 9 matches? Yeah. So I think it was like 5 or 6 for singles and then 4 for doubles, something like that. So yeah, it was fun though. I mean, he's such a great player to watch, and he's so athletic. And he had an incredible match with our hometown favorite, Frances Tiafoe, where the first 2 sets were tie breaks, and Frances had 5 match points, I think it was, in the second set, albeit most, if not all of them, were on Kyrgios' serve. And another funny tangent is that, well, it wasn't funny for Frances, but Nick Kyrgios, he didn't wait on his serve, so there were, I think, at least 2 match points where the crowd was still in the middle of cheering, and people were yelling stuff out, and Nick just went ahead and served, and he served an ace, I remember very clearly, on one of those match points. And but I guess you have to play to the server's pace, but that was definitely something that you don't see very often. Usually players will pause and wait for the crowd to be quiet, or maybe the chair umpire will tell the crowd to be quiet first. But anyways, I mean, you just compare Nick, where he used to tank matches, and I'm not saying that he never will, I don't know, but he used to tank matches, or he was just really unfocused to the point of just like blasting the ball with no real serious intent. But in this case, he was very focused. He wanted to do really well, and when you couple that motivation that he talked about with his talent and weapons, then it resulted in him winning both the singles and doubles titles, which is a great achievement, obviously. So lesson number 3 is the importance of having big weapons that I think I just mentioned. Kyrgios' serve was unbreakable, as I mentioned, in the entire Citi Open tournament. His forehand was just too big as well, especially in doubles. It was very interesting watching Jack Sock, who has clearly one of the heaviest forehands in the game, if not the heaviest. And then I think there might be 1 or 2 other players, but his is definitely really tough to handle. And then also Kyrgios' forehand is obviously, the modern forehand. His is really heavy as well. And I would see them playing, some of the greatest doubles players, Like, Ivan Dodd, is one, obviously, who he played in the final with Austin Krajicek. And when those guys, had a forehand that they just ripped it, and the doubles specialists really had a hard time getting those shots back. Oftentimes they would hit it, volley it long or volley it in the net. And these weapons it's just really important to develop at least one big weapon. I mean, can you imagine, like, you at your stage, your NTRP rating, whatever it is, a 3.5, a 4.5, and then you have like a serve like Kyrgios, or even like half of his serve? That would really make your level much, much higher. And when Nick was in trouble, a lot of times, I mean, he would just serve a couple huge serves, and that was that. And if you have like a big serve or a big forehand, or better yet, both, then you're going to go far. So I definitely would highly encourage you to work on, one of your favorite shots and make it a weapon, so that you can take command and try to divert the point patterns to that weapon or weapons. Lesson number 4 from Nick Kyrgios that I learned. It's kind of it's not the opposite of what I just mentioned, but it was very interesting to see that Nick's backhand, I won't say it's ugly, and I can't say that I have the most beautiful backhand technique, but it's not the prettiest looking backhand. It's really not much of a backhand. I mean, it still gets the job done, though. I mean, a lot of times it looks like he's just bunting the ball back, just getting the ball back in play. It's a very flat shot. He can rip it if he wants, but the vast majority of the time, Nick Kyrgios is using his backhand to stay in the rally and set up his forehand. If you've heard about Craig O'Shaughnessy, who I've had on my summits before, he talks about the sword and the shield, and the sword is the forehand and the backhand is the shield, and you generally want to be trying to hit as many forehands as you can. Just, all the stats show that that's the way to win. But as long as you have a consistent backhand, you can win your matches with other stronger parts of your game, like the serve and the forehand, for instance, or if you have a great net game. But, like 90% of the time or more, I just watched Nick get his backhand back in the court, just hit it cross court, or maybe divert the ball once in a while, but never really going for it. Just getting the backhand back with some decent depth. And then when he got his forehand, he would take control. And yeah, that was pretty much all he needed to decimate the entire field. Lesson number 5, cinco here, is even the pros miss easy shots. I saw this some from Nick, but also some certain other instances that I saw from other pros as well. There was one early round match. I think it might have been the second round of qualifying. I want to say JC Aragon and his opponent, who was I think he's representing the US, but was born in Brazil. A really good player. He actually won the Australian Open Juniors. Maybe I can click around while I stall by continuing to talk here, and I'll be able to find it. Maybe just give me another sec here. Let's see. Oh no, actually it was the first round of qualifying. So it was Bruno Kuzuhara, just in case you're curious. I mean, he won the Aussie Open Junior, so he's pretty good. But it was very interesting because the very last game, so it was 5-4 Aragon, and I think he was up a break and serving to win it. And then it was add in, and he had a sitter, really easy sitter forehand, and he hit it long. And I said, okay, interesting. And then Kuzuhara then won the deuce point, and then he had a really easy sitter forehand as well. And you're thinking, okay, I mean, Aragon missed, that's fine, but this guy's going to make it now. And he missed the sitter forehand. And, I think myself and a lot of us, maybe 4-5 plus, 4-0 maybe, would probably make I'd say at least 7 out of 10 of those shots. But I mean, it kind of gave me comfort in a weird way, maybe not so weird, that, even the pros are missing shots. We're not robots. Everybody misses and makes errors some of the times. Also in the doubles, I was watching a great friend of the podcast, Sophie Chang. Her and her partner, they played a great match. They were up against Sloane Stephens and her partner in the third set tiebreaker. And Sophie's partner got pretty tight. And they were, did I just say this? They were up 7-4 in the tiebreak. And then Sophie's partner pushed a backhand extremely tentatively out to the side, past the double sideline. So, and then when she returned again, I forget if it was like 8-all or something like that. Then again, the opponent, it might have been Sloane, served it to her backhand, and then she was really tight again, and then pushed it into the net. Really, not much use of the hips and just more of the arm and whatnot. And again, like, she's a really good player, professional, but it just goes to show you that, being tight isn't just happening with club level players. So that was very interesting. And just remember that everyone makes errors, everyone gets tight. And when you accept it, then it's going to help you to not beat yourself up when it does happen. Because when it does happen and you beat yourself up, then it only just reinforces just negative vibes and the negative thoughts that, that's my personality, that's who I am, I'm a choker, blah, blah, blah. Instead, you say, it happens, move on, boom. Just like Federer does, when you listen to his press conferences, he just shakes it off. He's amazing at that. Hope to see him again playing soon. And I don't know if you all heard, but I think Serena's last tournament will be the US Open. She definitely mentioned that she'd be retiring this year, so that's interesting. And obviously, the legends are slowly phasing out of the game, I guess. And then lesson number 6, to go back to the lessons from Nick Kyrgios, is the power of having fun. And what I noticed most of all is that throughout the tournament, Nick was smiling and trying to pump up the crowd and joking with his opponents. He had some amazing points in particular. Again, I remember several with Frances Tiafoe, where, just like they both had incredible shots, and Nick closed one out with a half volley or like a super low volley where he was like stretching and lunging for it. And then he just looked at Tiafoe and smiled, and then Tiafoe smiled back. And then Nick and Jack Sock were constantly joking around the doubles. I'm trying to remember who they were playing, but it was the semifinals. And it was a third set tiebreak, and they're just like laughing every point. And it was pretty cool to see that. And I think, when you do that, it just fills you with positive energy and helps you play better rather than worrying so much about the result. And congruent with this is that probably the most told advice, when I ask my guests, what is your one piece of advice that you can give us to help us improve our tennis games? They have said, just have fun. I know Rick Macy has said this and some others, and it seems so simple and cliche, but you really do have to remember this. I mean, I always try to remember, as much as I can, to just be grateful to be able to play this great game and, just to have fun. And when I do that, then it's more fun. And, I just play with joy, and usually I'm pretty satisfied with, my effort and so forth. So those are the 6 lessons that I learned from Nick Kyrgios, and I hope that you enjoyed them and that, you're able to learn something, at least, take one of these pieces of advice, implement them in your game. I'll review them again. Number 1, a lower ball toss on the serve and its benefits. Number 2, the importance of a serious and focused mindset. Number 3, the importance of having big weapons. Number 4, that you don't need to have an amazing backhand to win matches as long as it's consistent. Number 5, even the pros miss easy shots. And number 6, the power of having fun. So there you go. Really appreciate you listening. And if you enjoyed this episode and got value from it, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review for the Tennis Files podcast. You can do that by going to tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts or leaving a review, hitting that review button on your favorite podcast app of choice that you use to listen to the show, whether that's, Spotify or Google Podcasts or whatnot. I just find that Apple Podcasts moves the needle the best in terms of getting the show to be more visible in the rankings. Therefore, more people will see it and more will be helped. Appreciate that again. And let me give you a quote, as I often do at the end of the show. And this one is by Leo Buscaglia. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And I'm a Leo. That's pretty cool. Sorry, I just had my birthday recently. And Leo said, "Change is the end result of all true learning." I really love that quote. Thank you, Leo. And with that, thanks so much for listening, and really excited to bring you some great interviews coming up. I was able to connect with a lot of people at the Citi Open, which was fantastic. So definitely going to have some fun and interesting interviews for you, and perhaps some fun tennis stories as well from these individuals who I will reveal gradually on the show. So with that, thanks so much and have a great one. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is your host, mehrban signing out.